All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers and how they performed yesterday against the Jaguars. And listen, I said this game was going to be a close game. I mean, the Jags, been playing good football lately. I mean, the offense is still trying to, find its rhythm. But they were 6-2 going into this game. 49ers coming off a bye. They've been struggling a little bit. A lot, you could say. The way the defense has been playing and, Brock Purdy and him turning the ball over, the last couple of weeks. So, going into this game, we were going to see, the 49ers coming off a bye, how would they respond after losing 3 straight? And they looked like the 49ers. They ended up winning this game 34-3. This game really just was not much of a game at all. The Jags, they started off their first 3 possessions punting, then they fumbled on their 4th possession. The Niners, their first drive, they went right down the field. Brock Purdy connected with Brandon Ayuk for a 13-yard touchdown. Then they kicked a field goal. They were up 10-0 after the first quarter. In the second quarter, the Jags fumbled, although the Niners didn't really do anything with the ball after that. They punted. So at one point, this game was 10-3. Into the half, it was 13-3. So I mean, yeah, the Jags didn't play great, but you're like, okay, well, let's see what they can do in the second half. Then the Niners, they opened up the second half. 2 plays, 75 yards. Brock Purdy connected with George Kittle for a 66-yard touchdown that put them up 20-3. Then Trevor Lawrence threw a pick. It was a bad interception. I think that was the one he was trying to shuffle it off to. He was trying to shovel it off to Bigsby because he was about to get sacked, and then it was too high. It went off of Bigsby, and then it got picked off by Ufanga. Niners punted. Then the Jags fumbled again, and that led to another touchdown. That one was to Deebo Samuel, a rushing touchdown from 23 yards out. So Deebo Samuel was back in this game, so that was huge, getting him back. Then Trevor Lawrence threw another pick, and eventually that led to another Niners touchdown. Brock Purdy connecting with Kyle Juszczyk. So that put them up 34-3, and that was basically the end of the game. That was basically the game. They tried to get Christian McCaffrey to score, because at one point Sam Darnold came into the game, but they could not get McCaffrey to score, and his touchdown streak ended at 17 games. The Niners as a team ran the ball for 144 yards. McCaffrey had 95 yards rushing. Deebo Samuel had 29 and a touchdown, that 23-yard touchdown. Brock Purdy had a good game. Great game, 19-26, 296 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks in the game. So a turnover-free game for him. George Kittle had a big game, 3 receptions for 116 yards and a touchdown. The 66-yard touchdown obviously was the big part of that. Brandon Ayuk, 55 yards receiving and a touchdown. Just an overall great performance by the Niners. Their defense looked like, they were back to, how they're supposed to be. In this game. Fred Warner had a pick. Ufanga had a pick. Nick Bosa had a fumble recovery. Ambry Thomas had a fumble recovery. Javon Hargrave had 1.5 sacks in this game. Nick Bosa had 1.5 sacks. Cleveland Farrell had a sack in this game as well. I almost said Chris Young. Chase Young. Sorry. He had a half sack in this game as well in his 49ers debut. And it was just overall a great performance by the Niners. And then for the Jags, Trevor Lawrence had a rough game, 17-29, 185 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They couldn't run the ball, which against the Niners is tough to do so. 59 yards rushing on the ground. Their leading receiver was Christian Kirk. He had 6 receptions for 104 yards. The Jags just couldn't get anything going against the Niners. The Niners were just a better team in this game, and they looked like how they were at the beginning of the season. And that's scary for the NFL because, now, obviously with some teams, they're going to go through their rough stretches. And, the 49ers had that, and I think they kind of got that out of the way. And if that's the 49ers team that we are going to get going forward, it's not good for the rest of the NFL because, now they got Tampa on their schedule at home, and it's possible Baker Mayfield might not be playing in the game for the Bucs, so they might have Kyle Trask starting. Although Even if Baker plays, I don't really think the Bucs really stand a chance in the game. Last year with Brady at quarterback, I mean Brock Purdy's I think his first start, his first or second start, they ended up winning that game 35-7. So now you got Baker Mayfield, who's a downgrade from Tom Brady, and I'm saying a downgrade even though Brady was 44 when he was playing in that game, 43, 44 years old. And now they don't have Fournette, and they're not a good running team. So they're even though the 49ers are really good against the run. So it's going to be a rough game for the Bucs. So I think the Niners, they should win that. Then they're at Seattle on Thanksgiving, and then they're at Philly. So yeah, I mean we'll see how that Philly game goes, because now if the 49ers look like this going into Philly, I mean it's going to be a tough game for the Eagles. It's going to be a tough game for both teams, obviously. So we'll see. But the 49ers, they get back on the right track. As for the Jags, I mean, listen, that was just a much better team. The Jags are a good team, but they're not part of that elite group of teams. They're not. They're like that second or third tier. They'll still be at home. They'll be playing Will Levis, and the Titans are coming off a loss against Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. So we'll see what happens in that game if the Jags can get right. And what's interesting now is, the Houston Texans now, they're a game back in the division in the AFC South. Now, again, I still like the Jags, but Jags got to be a little careful here, because, if you stumble and the Texans keep riding off wins, I mean, you might be looking up at them for the division. So that definitely something to keep a close eye on, is that AFC South, because the Texans are right there, and especially after winning that game against the Bengals. I mean, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, for me, I think the 49ers are back. They were dealing with injuries. I think the Chase Young trade, that's going to help them tremendously. I mean, it already has helped them tremendously. I mean, the defensive line was all over Trevor Lawrence yesterday. Also, the Jags really don't have the best offensive line either, so that you also got to factor into that. But Trevor Lawrence was just forcing, a lot of throws. I mean, some of the picks were bad, and I mean they just couldn't get anything going. They couldn't run the football, because ETN's had a really good year, but against the Niners, it was going to be tough. And yeah, I mean, it really showed. It really did. But I mean, for me, I think the 49ers are back. I mean, I think a dominating performance like that. You get Deebo Samuel back in, he scores a touchdown. I mean, this team, this is a very good team, and as long as they play mistake-free football, I mean, because the interceptions by Brock Purdy have really hurt them. As long as their defense is able to apply pressure to the quarterback, and they play mistake-free football, I mean, the team, they looked like themselves. They did. And we'll just see what happens moving forward, But you got to be really encouraged by what the Niners were able to do yesterday, because it's been a rough couple weeks. I mean, they haven't won a game in pretty much a month, So they might have gotten their bad stretch of football out of the way, and they might be back to being the team that they were at the beginning of the season, when they were 5-0 and they looked like the favorites, So. But obviously people are going to be like, well, you got Deebo back, that Brock Purdy needs that and all that. But, I mean, also the defense. I mean, the defense played great. I mean, listen, the Jags are not a bad team. The Jags are a first-place team. And the Niners, they lost to P.J. Walker and the Browns. They lost to Kirk Cousins and the Vikings with no Justin Jefferson. And at the time, you thought the Vikings were still a bad team, but now look at what the Vikings did, and we'll get into them tomorrow, talking about Josh Dobbs and how he's performed these first 2 games with the Vikings, and Justin Jefferson on the way back. Yeah, and then you lose to Joe Burrow and the Bengals. It wasn't a good stretch for the Niners, but they played really well yesterday. They played a perfect game. They really did. Although McCaffrey did not score a touchdown, and everybody else did. Ayuk did, because he made a joke about it at the end of the game. Ayuk did, Kittle did, and Deebo Samuel did, but he was the only one that did. And even Juszczyk scored a touchdown too. McCaffrey was the only one that didn't score it, and they tried their best to get him to score, which, you want him to get the record, but at the same time, it's you also want to make sure he's healthy, because what if he gets hurt? The Niners would look so bad if Christian McCaffrey ended up getting hurt because they're just trying to get him to score a touchdown. I mean, listen, it's great for fantasy, but you want to keep Christian McCaffrey healthy. And, because if he gets hurt, you got other running backs that can step in, but they're not going to do nearly as good of a job as McCaffrey is. And he's a big part of their offense. He is. It's still crazy to think about that he's on the 49ers now. It's unbelievable. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. The Niners, they got right. They got right yesterday. They looked like the 49ers, so got to be worried if you're the other teams in the NFC and the NFL in general, if they they're back to how they were at the beginning of the year. So before we go to break, once again, I just want to remind you guys, tip or donate, get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show. It makes it more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And once again, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment. So, again, 49ers 34-3 over the Jags. And when we come back from our second break of the show, we're going to get into this was probably the best game of the weekend. Listen, Bengals Texans was very good. Browns Ravens. This game from start to finish was just unbelievable. The back and forth. And that is the Lions and the Chargers. Like I said, the amount of good games that we had this weekend, I'm trying to space them out the whole week because I some of them I just don't want to just gloss over and just not go back to them. I want to give them, their time to shine. And obviously I'm not going to get to every single game today, but throughout the week we'll get into a lot of them, the rest of them. And I don't know. I thought that was the appropriate thing to do for this week. I didn't really see anything wrong with that, but because there was just so many good games. Because we've had a couple of weeks where the slate really wasn't that entertaining. This week, that was not the case. There were a lot of entertaining games this weekend, and this one right here, which we will talk about when we get back from our second break, was definitely one of them. Was definitely one of them. It was probably, for me, was the best one. It just two great offenses going at it. So so that is what we will talk about when we get back from our second break. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.